Hello, and welcome back to the Sovereign Self Show. This is a place you learn how to become the leader of your life and your soul's mission through your business as an entrepreneur, spiritual empath in this world. Formally, this is Witchy Wellness Radio. So if you are a OG fan, thank you for tuning in. This is our 5th episode under the new name, The Sovereign Self Show. And today's episode is all about witch wounds and how we turn these into our superpowers. And before we jump into today's episode, I wanted to remind you guys, if you're listening on all podcast platforms, we are now streaming on a brand new spiritual and health TV network called Ethereal TV. You can learn more in the show notes below, or you can go to etherealtv.net. And we are doing an amazing giveaway currently for 6 months, all access pass to my new membership, Lead Body, a library full of somatic and embodiment practices so that you can really master your own energy of creation and being that leader in your life and in your business. And how to enter, all you need to do is write a review, screenshot it, share it on Instagram. Make sure, this is the most crucial part, tag me. Tag at Loren Cellentani or at Sovereign Self Show, because we won't see it. And every entry, every post you tag us in is one entry into this. We're going to be doing it every single month. So if you guys are interested in doing this giveaway, please write a review on whatever podcast platform you are tuning in from. And all right, let's dive into today's episode about superpower witch wounds. And I was thinking about this episode a few weeks ago, actually, and I didn't record it because I was actually coming up against my own witch wounds at the time. And, I've heard people say over the years, you really made it when you start getting the haters, right? And the trolls coming in on your posts or your DMs or whatever. But I never really experienced anything like that. And a few weeks ago, this person whom I don't even know, and started to write very hurtful, threatening things on my post, on my YouTube page, my Instagram post, and even talking about it right now. I'm like, my body's starting to react. And yes, the things were meant to be hurtful, but I knew at my core they weren't true. And it took me a few hours to really process this, to think, who in their right mind would do this? To really try to hurt somebody like this, who's just following their own heart, who's full of love, who's human, but who's here trying to better themselves, me, and also share that message with the world, trying to help lead other leaders. How could somebody hate that? But you know what? You're not going to be for everybody. And that's what I had to remember. And just because this person's view of me is that way does not mean I think that way about myself. And yes, the guilt and the shame came up, fear came up. Oh my God, what if other people saw this? What if they believe what this person is saying? All of the stories came up. It's going to ruin my business. And I'm like, whoa, watch out. The mind and the ego wants to just take control and snowball this. The disgust came up. What am I like? Am I like a fake? Am I really helping people? Like, every single thing came up. But I knew it wasn't about that person. I knew it was my time to really be honest, feel those feelings, because my body was ready to alchemize that, to transmute that energy into gold, so that I can actually step into more confidence and more clarity in myself and in my business and with a message that I stand for, of ending the era of the wounded healer so we can all step into our sovereign leadership as humanity evolves. So the last solo episode I did, if you guys haven't already tuned into it, is a great precursor for all of this and talking about the witch wounds, because episode, I think it's 272, was all about how contrast brings clarity. And without that contrast, I would have never been able to really fine tune and actually able to transmute what was coming up for me, or maybe what I kind of had behind the scenes and I didn't really realize it to begin with. And I want to walk you through later in this episode the steps that I took and the process that we teach in the lead body membership as well, of how to actually work when you have those really strong emotions come up, like guilt, shame, the fear. How do we actually use that for our growth? How do we not sweep it under the rug? How do we not run from it? How do we feel it and not get stuck and lost in it? Because I find a lot of the women I work with who are empaths, who've been on this journey for a while, we can sometimes get stuck in that healing loop, right? In the victimhood versus stepping into our sovereignty. And that's what we're all about here today and always on the Sovereign Self Show. So once my body calmed down a little bit, I was able to really have that conversation and talk and allow my body to express that energy and ask it, what is it searching for? What does it need? And that was what enabled me to step further in the clarity, into the confidence. And as I processed that, it was so funny. It was like the floodgates open on the other end. I had some random person reach out and confess their love for me virtually, like, oh, I'm so connected to you and all this beautiful stuff. And it was like the opposite ends of the spectrum here. And I was like, okay, something's changing. Now I'm building my capacity to, no matter what comments or emails or anything that's shown, I get to build this strong foundation in myself, in my work, in my abilities, in my mission, deeper than I ever thought was possible before. And what we're going to dive into in a little bit is like the key thing here is noticing how these moments where we feel these big emotions, how does that affect your body? How do these witch wounds affect your body, your energy, your emotions? Maybe when it's not a big triggering presence, when it's just kind of, coming underneath the radar. And today's episode, we're really going to dive deep into what are witch wounds, how they show up, and why they're happening for you, and how we can actually use these wounds, these triggers, if you will, to become your own superpower, as well as a few journaling questions or your own self-led somatic practice around this. So let's really dive in. So witch wounds, for me, I think if you're listening to this podcast, of course, we were formerly called Witchy Wellness Radio. The word witch for me was such a reclamation of that energy, to be this wise, empowered woman who's fully aware of her body, who's fully connected to the elements and to God, to nature itself, and to be fully in your power too, and to your sovereignty, before I really understood what sovereignty meant over the years. And so on the flip side of that, witch wounds, I feel like have, I don't want to say become popular, but they're more in like the word, the common dialect, or I don't know the word I'm trying to say, but they're kind of in the spiritual world. You might have heard what witch wounds are. And it's really these visibility triggers, whether it's in this lifetime or a past lifetime, where you were sharing your gifts, where you were in your power, or maybe you couldn't. And the fear of really being killed of being persecuted comes up, even though you know now, 2024, as is recorded, that you probably won't. 99.99% sure you are safe. You have easy access to share your heart and your gifts with the world. But why do you feel like an angry mob is going to chase after you if you click the live button on Instagram? These are examples of what witch wounds are. Past life trauma or samskara in the yogic tradition. And it's not to justify being a victim. I want to be very clear in this episode here. I don't know if you can see the light flashing on me right now, but as soon as I started talking, the energy is going crazy. The witch wounds aren't to be stuck in victimhood. It's not to say the patriarchy, this person, that, this situation, this. It's to really be able to feel those emotions and to heal, which means alchemize that energy from fear into love this lifetime. Witch wounds can come up in numerous ways. Imposter syndrome, afraid of being successful, scared of being seen for who you really are, or putting yourself out there. Any way that you feel this vulnerability, shame, blame, or like you feel like you're playing small, 99% of the time is probably going to be a witch wound coming up. And that's only something that you're going to know for yourself and being able to be honest and present in your body. Maybe you have a hater coming in on your Instagram feed, or maybe it's something self-induced. And just really being noticing on like, oh, why am I doom scrolling right now? What happened to trigger me? Or maybe you see somebody else's content on social media and you feel jealous or imposter syndrome or like not enough. Really, this week I challenge you guys to pay attention to habitual behaviors like scrolling or maybe Netflix binge or whatever kind of your go-to coping mechanisms are. Not from a place of judgment, but to backtrack and see what was the culprit, what was the what ignited that reaction in yourself, and to be able to come back and process that in real time is going to actually propel you further than you could think, than you can ever imagine. And that's why I'm so passionate about embody or somatics, is because we're bringing the body on board with all of this. It's really easy to like overthink or ego or spiritually bypass things, but the body keeps the score, people. It can't lie. It cannot lie how you feel. So how they show up, yes, the emotions. Maybe you get a frog in your throat. Maybe you avoid posting on social media or starting that business you've been dreaming of. They're really unique to you and what's coming up for you. But the main reason here is they are happening for you, just like every single thing in your life. But these witch wounds are here because you're ready to heal them. They're here because you're ready to step into that sovereign leadership. You're ready to heal that wounded healer aspect of yourself over millennia and being that leading example of what is possible for humanity. And like I said, the previous episode I did, solo episode number 272, Contrast Brings Clarity, is a beautiful shining example of this. And this is one of, I think, my personal superpowers is the coaching and the somatic healing work that I do with my wonderful clients is exactly this. How can we reframe these situations, emotions, sensations as happening for us? Because the truth is they are happening for us, but we want to play the victim a lot of the times, or we want to judge ourselves for feeling certain ways. And that is not the case whatsoever. How to heal your witch wounds and alchemize it into your superpower. First of all, I've said this earlier, not a victim. Not a freaking victim in this state. If you are really, really triggered into like fight or flight. Take the time to allow your body to process, allow your nervous system to calm down. But once you're in a stable place, you really get to own how you feel. One of my favorite acronyms is actually the word witch. And it's from a song. If you guys haven't heard it before, I forget the artist's name. But the acronym is a woman in total control of herself or total command of herself. And to me, what that means is that we take ownership for how we feel, our thoughts, the belief system, because we're not a victim to our environment. We're not a victim to the patriarchy or the political that or the GMO this. You take control of your life, your reactions, and your own emotions. That is what it means to be a leader. In my book, that to be a sovereign creator being, that you create your own reality. And part of owning how you feel, a really good example of this that you guys can do right now. I learned this from Bashar, a channeled entity by Daryl Anka, very similar to Abraham. And Bashar talks about this phrase that could really change your life. And the phrase is, I choose to feel blank emotion, we'll just say angry, because I choose to believe I need to. So what this does, it allows you to complete the loop, the circuit, because when we're kids, we just say, I feel angry. And it's just a perpetual state. Your brain and your body don't complete the loop. So what this phrase does, I feel angry because I choose to believe I need to. Okay, I feel angry. Cool. But I'm choosing this. I'm choosing to believe I need to keep perpetuating this. You can feel an emotion. I don't remember the study, what it was called, but if you truly feel an emotion, it only lasts like 30 seconds long. Anything longer than that, you're perpetuating it yourself. Whatever emotion it may be. Good, bad, high, low vibration, doesn't matter. And what this phrase does, especially with the more negative, lower vibrational emotions, is it completes the loop. You're like, oh, I'm choosing to be a victim right now. Oh yeah, I do create my reality. But what it also does is when you're feeling really good or confident or excited, you can use this in those instances too. I feel ecstatic because I choose to believe I need to, and it's going to help propel and build that positive momentum. But what we're focusing on right now is how do we use the shame, the imposter, the blame, the fear that might come up with these witch wounds. How can we start healing them now? Well, the fear, the shame, the blame, the imposter, that energy lives within you. That's in your energy centers, your body, your cells. If it's coming up for you, it's coming up because it's ready to be transmuted. I don't even say released anymore because energy can't be created or destroyed. From my perspective and how I teach somatic practices is we actually learn how to transmute or shift that energy from the lower end of the spectrum to the higher end of the spectrum. And how these can turn into your superpower is, I think of it as an initiation. Without the contrast, we come to schoolroom earth to live this life of duality, of this contrast, where it's really easy to learn quickly here, if we choose to. We can resist as much as we want, but the reason why these witch wounds are your superpower is because the stronger the pull of the trigger, the emotion, the wound, the stronger your superpower potential is, just naturally. So think about it that way. You're feeling a strong negative emotion next time. This is just your superpower coming up to be seen, to be heard, to be felt in order to shift that energy. It's really just shifting your perspective into the superpower of confidence, into the superpower of clarity, into the superpower of owning your own life, being that sovereign leader that you are. So a quick somatic practice or journaling questions that you can do, you can pause this audio or write them down to really help you tune into if you feel witch wound coming up, if you feel like you have triggers around putting yourself out there, or you have a hater on the internet. This is a really good time to tune in and do that work to help transmute into your superpower. So the first question is, where in your business, whether it's a podcast, social media, has this witch wound come up in the past? Have you maybe avoided doing things after listening to this episode? What are some examples you can think of, or maybe current examples that are popping up in your life? And after you think of these examples, whether it's present life or in the past, what were the specific emotions that came up? Taking out the situation, the people, the details, what were the emotions? And if you have a couple examples you've listed, you might start to see a pattern come through of the specific emotions that are like perpetuating. And this is furthering really that example of this is coming up for you. Because without the contrast brings clarity. You might not know that you were actually running on a program of victimhood and shame behind the scenes. So using these examples, this practice, these journal questions to help you gain that clarity. And then in addition to that, what are some of the physical sensations in your body? Or maybe postures? Do you want to go crawl on a ball? Do you get really tense traps, or your neck seizes up? Do you get TMJ, your jaw locks? What are some physical sensations that might pop up in these triggers, or just kind of chronically when this energy is present? And then what are some of the patterns and habits that these witch wounds or triggers create? Maybe it's the doom scrolling on Instagram, binge watching TV. For me, I know there's always some unprocessed emotion or something come up when I just want to like binge watch TV and not, block out the rest of the world because I'm blocking out and running from my own feelings. So bringing up these examples that you previously wrote about, what are some patterns or responses that your body, that your mind has created, coping mechanisms, that next time those coping mechanisms come up, this will help you maybe figure out a plan or backtrack to see where this came from, so you can start to deep dive into these emotions, into these belief systems, and start to transmute them into your superpower. And then lastly, adding in that I feel blank because I choose to believe I need to. So as you gather all the information, all those emotions, maybe even writing it out like an affirmation, or in the moment when those things come up, I feel ashamed because I choose to believe I need to. Just watch your life transform as you just practice this one simple phrase throughout the day. All right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to today's episode of the Sovereign Self Show. If this is hitting home and you feel like you could use some extra support or specific practices in depth to help alchemize this energy from these witch wounds into your superpower, check out our Lead Body membership, which is a living, growing library of somatic practices of specific emotions. So if you're feeling rage, if you're feeling victimhood, and situations like witch wound or imposter syndrome, to help you focus that energy, feel it, and transmute it into your expansion and who you're really supposed to be. In addition to all of that, we have monthly new moon circles where we together as a community alchemize our energy to amplify our creation for the next month or the next cycle ahead. Those new moon circles have become literally my favorite thing out there. They're so freaking transformational. And remember, your body, your emotion, your business And all of the witch wounds are not in the way. They are leading the way to your success. All of my love until next time, everybody.